Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. What would you do if you witnessed someone being humiliated in public? Today's story proves that defending others when they can't defend themselves isn't just the right thing to do. It might just change your entire life in ways you never imagined. Before we dive in, I want to ask you, have you ever stood up for a stranger? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might inspire someone else to be brave. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across downtown's financial district, where glass towers stretched toward heaven while people below fought their own battles in hell. Maya Johnson clutched her coffee shop uniform tighter against the October chill, her breath forming small clouds as she hurried toward another 12-hour shift that would barely cover rent. At 23, Maya had learned that survival meant keeping your head down, your mouth shut, and your dreams small. Her worn sneakers, once white, now a testament to countless bus rides and double shifts, splashed through puddles that reflected the gleaming skyscrapers above. She was a ghost in a world of giants, invisible to the suits that brushed past her like she was smoke. But Maya carried something that couldn't be bought with all the money flowing through these streets, a heart that refused to harden, no matter how many times life had tried to break it. 6 blocks away, in the penthouse office of Meridian Industries, James Harrison III stood behind floor-to-ceiling windows, surveying his empire. At 38, he commanded a fortune that could buy small countries, yet satisfaction remained as elusive as morning mist. His tailored suit fit perfectly over shoulders that carried the weight of expectations, his grandfather's legacy, his father's ambitions, and his own relentless drive for perfection. "Mr. Harrison," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, "your mother called again. She's asking about lunch today." James's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Tell her I'm in meetings all day." It was a lie wrapped in expensive fabric. The truth was simpler and more painful. He was ashamed. Ashamed that his 70-year-old mother insisted on living in her modest apartment despite his repeated offers to relocate her to something more appropriate. Ashamed that she still shopped at discount stores and took public transportation like she was still married to a factory worker instead of being the mother of a CEO. Most of all, he was ashamed that her contentment with less somehow made his need for more feel hollow. But shame, like truth, has a way of demanding its due. At 11:47 a.m., both their carefully constructed worlds began to crack. Maya was rushing through Meridian Plaza, a shortcut to avoid being late, when the commotion erupted near the fountain. A small crowd had gathered, their phones already raised like modern-day pillories, ready to capture someone else's humiliation for their entertainment. In the center of the circle stood an elderly black woman, maybe 70, clutching a clearance rack dress against her chest. Her gray hair was neat but simple, her shoes practical but worn. She looked like someone's grandmother, someone's treasure, and she was being torn apart by vultures in business attire. "Excuse me, ma'am, but I think you're confused about where you're shopping," a sharp-voiced woman in a designer suit was saying, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is Meridian Plaza, not a thrift store. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the Walmart down the street." Laughter rippled through the crowd like poison through water. The elderly woman's shoulders straightened with quiet dignity. "I have every right to be here. I'm meeting my son for lunch." "Your son?" Another voice joined in, a man this time, his expensive watch catching the light as he gestured dismissively. "Lady, nobody who shops here has family who looks like." "Like what?" Maya's voice cut through the crowd like a blade through silk. Every head turned. Every phone pivoted. Every cruel smile faltered. Maya stepped into the circle, her coffee shop uniform suddenly feeling like armor. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice remained steady. "Like what, exactly? Like someone who taught their children to have manners? Like someone who knows the difference between class and having class?" The man's face reddened. "Now look here, girl." "No, you look." Maya moved closer to the elderly woman, creating a barrier with her body. "This woman hasn't done anything wrong except exist in your line of sight. And apparently, that's enough to bring out the worst in all of you." She turned to face the crowd, her dark eyes blazing with righteous fire. You want to know what's really embarrassing? It's not her clearance dress or her practical shoes. It's that a room full of supposed adults thinks it's entertainment to humiliate someone's grandmother. What drives someone to stand up when everyone else stays silent? Drop a comment and let me know what you think gives Maya the courage to act when others won't. The silence that followed Maya's words was thick enough to cut. Phone cameras continued rolling, but the cruel laughter had died, replaced by something far more uncomfortable, the recognition of their own ugliness reflected back at them. The elderly woman turned toward Maya, and for the first time, her composure cracked. Tears gathered in her warm brown eyes, not from the humiliation, but from the unexpected kindness of a stranger who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the fountain's gentle splash. "I'm Dorothy. Dorothy Harrison." Maya took her weathered hand in both of hers. "Maya Johnson. And you don't have to thank me for basic human decency, Mrs. Harrison." Neither of them noticed the elevator doors sliding open across the marble lobby. Neither saw the tall figure in the charcoal suit step out, his attention initially focused on his phone. But James Harrison III noticed them, noticed the crowd, the phones, the woman at its center. And then he saw her face. "Mom." The word escaped him like air from punctured lungs. The crowd parted as if he were Moses commanding the Red Sea. His $1,000 shoes clicked against marble with each measured step, but inside his chest, his heart was sprinting. Dorothy's face transformed when she saw him, shame and relief warring in her expression. "Jimmy," she said softly, using the name she'd called him before the world taught him to be James Harrison III. Maya felt the shift in the air before she understood it. The man approaching commanded attention without demanding it, wore authority like a second skin. When his eyes met hers, she saw something that made her stomach drop, recognition mixed with something that might have been horror. "These people were harassing your mother," Maya said, her voice steady despite the growing realization of who she was addressing. "She was just waiting for you, and they decided to make it their business too." "I know." James's voice was quiet, controlled, but beneath the surface, Maya could hear molten steel. "I heard enough." He turned to face the crowd that had been so eager to humiliate his mother moments before. Now they looked like children caught with their hands in the cookie jar, their phones slowly disappearing into pockets and purses. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said, addressing the sharp-voiced woman who had started the confrontation. "I believe you work for Hartwell and Associates. They handle our legal contracts." The woman's face went ashen. "Mr. Harrison, Not anymore, they don't." His words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples of panic. "And Mr. Peterson," he continued, turning to the man with the expensive watch, "Preston Financial manages several of our investment portfolios." Past tense, as of now. "Sir, please, we were just." "Just what?" James stepped closer, and Maya noticed his hands were trembling slightly, not with fear, but with barely contained rage. "Just humiliating my mother for sport? Just teaching your children that cruelty is acceptable entertainment? Just proving that money can't buy the one thing that actually matters?" The crowd began to disperse like smoke, people suddenly remembering urgent appointments and pressing calls. In moments, only James, Dorothy, and Maya remained by the fountain. Dorothy placed a gentle hand on her son's arm. "Jimmy, they're gone now. It's over." But it wasn't over. James looked at Maya, really looked at her, taking in her coffee shop uniform, her worn sneakers, the way she still stood protectively near his mother despite knowing who he was. "You defended her," he said, and his voice carried something Maya couldn't quite identify. Wonder, maybe. Or disbelief. "Anyone should have," Maya replied simply. "But they didn't." James's eyes swept the empty space where the crowd had been. They pulled out their phones instead. They laughed instead. They walked away instead. He looked back at her. "But you didn't." Dorothy smiled through her tears. She called them out on their behavior. Made them see themselves for what they really were. She squeezed Maya's hand. This young woman has more class in her little finger than that entire crowd had combined. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. I just did what anyone should do. I didn't know she was. I didn't know you were. My son, Dorothy finished gently. The CEO of all this. She gestured at the gleaming lobby around them. But more importantly, he's a man whose mother I am very proud of, even when he's too busy to have lunch with her. The gentle rebuke hit its mark. James's jaw worked silently for a moment before he spoke. Mom, I'm sorry. I was going to call and cancel again. I know, sweetheart. Dorothy's voice held no anger, only sadness. You're always going to call and cancel. Just like your father did. The words hung between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. Would you join us for lunch? Dorothy asked suddenly, turning to Maya. Both of you. I think we all have some talking to do. Maya glanced between mother and son, feeling like an intruder in a family drama she barely understood. I appreciate the offer, Mrs. Harrison, but I need to get to work. I'm already late, and I can't afford to. Where do you work? James interrupted, his CEO instincts kicking in. Corner Cafe on 5th Street. Maya checked her phone. 12:23 p.m. I was supposed to be there 20 minutes ago. James pulled out his phone, his fingers moving swiftly across the screen. This is James Harrison calling for Maya Johnson. She's going to be delayed due to a family emergency. Yes, I'll take full responsibility. Thank you. Maya stared at him. You can't just. Actually, I can. He pocketed his phone. Corner Cafe caters several of our office events. They won't fire someone I personally vouch for. That's not the point, Maya said, frustration bleeding into her voice. I don't need your charity or your influence. I just did what was right. And that's exactly why you need to have lunch with us, Dorothy interjected softly. Because doing what's right shouldn't be remarkable, but somehow it is. And I want to understand why a young woman I've never met was willing to risk her job to defend me when my own son. She trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air. James felt the weight of his mother's unfinished sentence like a physical blow. When had he become the kind of man who inspired shame instead of pride? When had success started to feel like failure? They walked to Meridian's executive dining room in loaded silence. Maya had never seen anything like it, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, artwork that probably cost more than her annual salary, a table that could seat 20 but was set intimately for 3. This is where you eat lunch? Maya asked, unable to hide her awe. This is where I eat alone, James corrected quietly. Usually while working. Dorothy settled into her chair with the grace of someone who had raised a king but never forgotten she was still a mother. Tell me about yourself, Maya. What do you do besides rescue damsels in distress? Maya smiled despite her nervousness. I work at the coffee shop, take night classes at the community college. I'm studying business administration. She hesitated. I want to open my own cafe someday. Somewhere people feel welcome regardless of what they're wearing or where they come from. James found himself leaning forward, genuinely interested for the first time in months. What kind of cafe? The kind where a grandmother can meet her busy son for lunch without being judged, Maya said pointedly. Where success is measured by the smiles you create, not the zeros in your bank account. The arrow found its mark. James sat back, his expression unreadable. Dorothy clapped her hands together. I love it. What's stopping you? Maya's laugh was rueful. About $40,000 in startup costs, for starters. Plus finding investors who believe a girl from the projects can run a successful business. The projects? James asked, and immediately regretted the way it sounded. Maya's chin lifted defensively. Yes, the projects. Where people like your mother get judged for shopping clearance and people like me get judged for dreaming big. She turned to Dorothy. I grew up in Riverside housing. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us fed and housed. She taught me that your address doesn't determine your worth, your actions do. Wise woman, Dorothy murmured. What happened to her? Cancer took her 2 years ago. Maya's voice was steady, but James caught the flicker of pain. She never got to see me graduate high school or start college. But she made me promise to keep dreaming, no matter what anyone said about girls like me. The room fell quiet except for the distant hum of the city beyond the windows. James stared at his hands, thinking about promises made to mothers, about dreams deferred and dignity defended. I've been running from lunch dates with my mother for 6 months, he said suddenly. Do you want to know why? Both women looked at him, waiting. Because I was embarrassed. The confession tasted bitter. Embarrassed that she still shops at discount stores, still takes the bus, still lives in the same apartment she shared with my father before he died. Embarrassed that she finds joy in simple things while I... He gestured at the opulent room around them. While I need all of this to feel successful. Dorothy reached across the table and took her son's hand. Oh, Jimmy. Watching you defend her today, James continued, looking directly at Maya, I realized something. You weren't embarrassed to stand with her. You were proud to. And I've been so focused on building an empire that I forgot the most important thing my parents ever taught me. Which was? Maya asked softly. That who you are matters more than what you have. He squeezed his mother's hand. I've spent so much time trying to give her a life worthy of my success that I forgot she already had something I lost along the way, the ability to see good in people regardless of their circumstances. Have you ever been ashamed of the people who love you most? Sometimes our biggest growth comes from our most uncomfortable truths. What do you think James needs to do to repair his relationship with his mother? Share your thoughts below. The waiter arrived with their meals, but none of them seemed interested in eating. The air was thick with revelations and the possibility of change. Maya, James said slowly, you said you needed $40,000 to start your cafe. That's not why I told you, Maya said quickly. I wasn't asking for. I know. He held up a hand. But what if I told you that Meridian Industries has been looking for community investment opportunities? Small businesses that reflect our company values. Maya's heart began to race. What are you saying? I'm saying that after what I witnessed today, I think our company values need some serious re-evaluation. And I think the right partner could help us get back to what matters. Dorothy watched the exchange with growing excitement, but Maya's expression was skeptical. You want to invest in my cafe because I defended your mother? That's not how business works, Mr. Harrison. That's guilt, not good judgment. James leaned back, impressed despite himself. You're right. It would be terrible business to invest $40,000 based on one act of kindness. He paused, pulling out his phone. Which is why I'm prepared to invest $100,000. Maya's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. What? $100,000, full partnership terms, with one condition. James's eyes were intense, focused. I want to be involved. Not as a silent partner, not as someone who writes checks from an ivory tower. I want to work beside you, learn what it means to create something that brings people joy instead of just profit. Jimmy, Dorothy whispered, her eyes shining. But Maya was shaking her head. You don't know anything about me. My credit score, my business plan, my experience. I know you risked your job to defend a stranger, James interrupted. I know you grew up with nothing and still managed to maintain your principles. I know you see opportunity where others see obstacles, and you measure success by the impact you make rather than the money you take. He leaned forward, his voice gaining intensity. Most importantly, I know that in 5 minutes, you taught me more about leadership than 10 years of business school. Real leaders don't surround themselves with people who agree with them, they surround themselves with people who challenge them to be better. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. And what makes you think I'd want a partner who was ashamed of his own mother? The question hit like a physical blow, and James visibly flinched. But instead of defending himself, he nodded slowly. Because I hope that the woman who saw worth in a stranger might also see potential in a man trying to change. Because maybe someone who believes in second chances for everyone deserves a business partner who's willing to earn his. Dorothy had been quiet through this exchange, but now she spoke. Maya, may I tell you something about my son? Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. When Jimmy was 12, he used every penny of his birthday money to buy groceries for our neighbor, Mrs. Chun, whose husband had lost his job. He left them on her doorstep anonymously because he didn't want her to feel embarrassed. Dorothy's voice was soft with memory. That boy is still in there somewhere. Success just taught him to hide. James stared at his mother, surprised she remembered. He's not offering you charity, dear one. He's offering you partnership. There's a difference. Maya looked between them, the powerful CEO who was learning to be human again, and the wise mother who had never stopped believing in the boy he used to be. I'd want equal say in all decisions, Maya said finally. James blinked. Equal say. You heard me. If we're partners, we're equals. Your money doesn't make you the boss, it makes you invested. Can you handle taking direction from someone who grew up in the projects? A slow smile spread across James's face. I think I'm about to find out. Dorothy clapped her hands together, laughing with pure joy. Oh, this is going to be wonderful. Jimmy, you're about to get the education your father and I could never afford to give you. What education is that? He asked. Maya grinned, and for the first time since entering this gleaming tower, she felt completely at ease. How to build something that matters. 6 months later. The grand opening of Common Ground Cafe drew a line around the block. The space was everything Maya had dreamed: warm woods, comfortable seating, local art on the walls, and a menu that celebrated both comfort and culture. But more than that, it was exactly what she'd promised, a place where everyone belonged. James stood behind the counter, his sleeves rolled up, his expensive suit replaced with a Common Ground apron. His hair was slightly mussed. His hands bore the honest stains of coffee and hard work, and he had never looked happier. Order up. Maya called from the kitchen, sliding 2 plates across the pass. James, table 6 is still waiting for their lattes. On it, he called back, his movements now fluid and practiced. 6 months of working beside Maya had taught him things no boardroom ever could: the satisfaction of service, the importance of consistency, the value of treating every customer like family. Dorothy sat at her regular corner table, holding court with a group of neighborhood grandmothers who had adopted the cafe as their second home. She looked up as James approached with their order. Jimmy, Mrs. Chun wants to know if you're still planning to help her grandson with his college application essays. Tell her I'll be there Sunday afternoon, James replied, setting down the steaming mugs. And remind her that I'm only good for editing. The ideas have to be his own. Maya watched this exchange from across the cafe, her heart full. The transformation in James had been gradual but profound. The man who had once been embarrassed by his mother's humility now treasured their weekly lunch dates. The CEO who had measured worth in zeros now found joy in serving coffee to construction workers and stay-at-home moms. Maya. A familiar voice called out, and Maya turned to see her former manager from Corner Cafe approaching with a wide smile. Sarah. How are you? Better question is how are you? This place is incredible. Sarah gestured around the bustling cafe. I heard through the grapevine that you've got a pretty famous business partner. Maya glanced over at James, who was now wiping down tables and chatting with customers like he'd been born to it. Famous, maybe. But more importantly, he's become a friend. Just a friend. Sarah asked with a knowing smile. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. Over the months of working together, she and James had developed a partnership that went beyond business. Late nights planning menus had turned into deep conversations about dreams and fears. Early mornings prepping for the day had become comfortable silences filled with understanding. Somewhere between arguing over tile choices and celebrating their first profitable week, friendship had blossomed into something deeper. "We're taking it slow," Maya admitted. "Building something real takes time." As if summoned by her thoughts, James appeared at her elbow. "Maya, we're almost out of your grandmother's pound cake recipe. Should I start another batch?" "I'll handle it," Maya said, but James shook his head. "You've been on your feet all day. I've got this." He paused, his expression growing serious. "Besides, I promised her I'd learn to make it properly. Can't keep that promise if I don't practice." Maya's heart clenched. James had never met her grandmother, but he spoke of her with the same reverence Maya did. He'd learned to make her recipes not just for the cafe, but to honor the woman who had helped shape Maya's character. "Just remember, don't overmix the batter, and the secret ingredient is patience, not sugar," James finished with a grin. "I've got it memorized." As he headed toward the kitchen, Sarah whistled low. "Girl, if you don't marry that man, I will." Maya laughed, but her eyes followed James with something that felt dangerously close to love. "We'll see what happens." The evening rush began to wind down, and Maya found herself at the register, processing the day's final orders. A young couple approached, the woman heavily pregnant, the man nervously clutching a job application. "Excuse me," the man said hesitantly, "I heard you might be hiring? I've got restaurant experience, and we really need—" "Of course," Maya interrupted gently. "What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus Johnson." He paused. "No relation, I assume?" Maya smiled. "Not by blood, but maybe by choice. Can you start tomorrow?" Relief flooded the young man's face. "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely." As Maya handed him the paperwork, she caught James watching from the kitchen doorway, his expression soft with admiration. This was why they worked, not just because they complemented each other's skills, but because they shared the same values. They both understood that success meant creating opportunities for others, not just profits for themselves. Later, after the last customer had left and the chairs had been stacked, Maya and James found themselves alone in the cafe they'd built together. "Penny for your thoughts," James said, settling beside her at the counter. "Just thinking about how different things could have been," Maya mused. "If I'd walked away from that crowd 6 months ago. If I'd minded my own business." "But you didn't," James said softly. "You saw someone who needed defending, and you acted. Everything else followed from that one moment of courage." Maya turned to face him fully. "What made you change your mind? About your mother, about what matters?" James was quiet for a long moment. "Watching you that day, I realized I'd spent so much time building walls around my success that I'd forgotten what I was trying to protect. My mother raised me to be the kind of man who defends others, not the kind who's embarrassed by the people who love him most." He reached for her hands, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on her palms. "You reminded me who I used to be. Who I want to be again." "And who's that?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone worthy of the faith you showed in me. Someone my mother can be proud of. Someone who measures wealth by the relationships he builds, not the accounts he manages." Maya felt tears gathering in her eyes. "James, I love you," he said simply. "I love your courage, your compassion, your ability to see the best in people even when they can't see it in themselves. I love the way you make me want to be better, not just more successful." "I love you too," Maya whispered, and when he kissed her, it tasted like promise and possibility and the kind of future they were brave enough to build together. Outside, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, people chasing dreams, building empires, measuring worth in dollars and status. But inside Common Ground Cafe, two hearts beat in sync with a different drum, one that measured success in smiles shared, lives touched, and love discovered in the most unexpected places. Dorothy's words echoed in the quiet space. Doing what's right shouldn't be remarkable, but somehow it is. Maybe that was changing. Maybe kindness was becoming contagious. Maybe one act of courage really could ripple outward, transforming not just one life, but all the lives that intersected with it. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most valuable thing anyone could build. What's one act of kindness you could perform this week that might create its own ripple effect? Your story could be the inspiration someone else needs to find their courage. Share your commitment in the comments below. Let's create a wave of compassion.